What is up, guys? This video is completely unscripted where I talk about my journey into robotics. Now, as I've said before, my journey into robotics was not a linear path where I just graduated and straight out of college I started working in robotics and here I am. No, that was not the case. My journey into robotics was filled with a lot of exploration and I've had quite a few questions on that. So this video is based on all the questions I've got, which were on the lines of, hey, how did you end up in robotics and how did you go about exploring different domains and how did you find your love for robotics? Okay, so I started my graduation or my undergrad in 2012 and then I finished it in 2016. This was the time where I was slightly confused about what I wanted to do in my life and, of course, in my career. So that was the time I explored quite a bit. In my university, we would end up participating in different robotics competitions, and that was my first foray into robotics just for hobby projects as a student. But there was this one problem there. As a university student, based on exams and all of that, I actually thought that electronics, that was my major back then, is not something I like because I did not like studying for exams. Now I know that I am not a person who loves the concept of university and exams and all of that, but back then I just thought that because I don't like the process of giving exams and studying for exams, it just means that I don't like technology as much. Well, that was far from the truth. I absolutely love technology, but it took me a while to understand that. Even after university I explored quite a bit. So anyway, in 2016, I graduated, but before that, as I said, I was working on hobby projects for robotics, and then I had my major internship in NVIDIA graphics. That was fortunately, and back then I thought it was unfortunate, but fortunately in a software team. And because of that, I also got to know a lot about software engineering. That was mainly C++ back then. 6 months of rigorous work as a software engineering intern that set me up for everything in the future. So, 6 months of internship in a software engineering company or in NVIDIA in a software engineering team, and then all my exploration for hobby projects and student led competitions in robotics. This was what I had when I graduated in 2016. So I started working in a robotics startup in India, in Delhi, where I was working as a hardware designer. But because of my previous experiences in software, I also took up quite a bit of firmware work, and then I was working on both hardware and firmware, but mainly hardware. I worked there for about 8 months, and being a person who likes to explore and figure out what he likes a lot, I decided that I also wanted to see academia because I had this question in my head saying, hey, I'm not sure about what tech I want to work in because remember, because of exams, I just thought that university told me I don't like tech as much, so maybe that's the case. But I thought, hey, let's give it a shot. Let's explore tech properly. So let's look at academia as well because I was working in a startup in 2016. So I went to Singapore and I started working as a research assistant in a robotics lab. That was a soft robotics lab. There I was supposed to work mainly on electronics, but I ended up working in material sciences, which was something I absolutely hated back then. But I worked there for about 8 months, and that's when I realized that academia is not for me. It works great for a lot of people, but for a person like me, academia seems super slow. And one of the things I didn't like about my lab was that they focused a lot on publishing papers, but I wanted to build more than just publish papers for the sake of it. I'm not saying it's wrong, like some people love it, of course, but that was just not me. I know now that I am more of a builder per se. So I worked there for 8 months and then I came back to India. And that was the time I was extremely confused. I did not know what I wanted to do because I tried robotic startup. It was nice. That was back then one of the best places I worked in. And then I also tried academia. That didn't really work for me. So I actually took my time. I Since I did not have a lot of money in my account back then, I ended up staying at my friend's basement in a city called Bangalore in India for quite cheap. And that was when I was figuring out what I wanted to do. So I still remember that basement had broken windows. There was a cat which would just come in randomly, but that was a good time. Just bunking with friends and figuring out what I wanted to do for my life. And then I started working in a company called Western Digital or SanDisk. Some of you might know that company. I was working there as an ASIC software engineer. I worked there for 2 years. Now, the thing is, I kind of knew that I am not a guy for corporate, but I took up that gig because one, I wanted to be sure. Because remember, I had experienced the startup culture, I had experienced academia. I also wanted to experience multinational corporations to have a holistic picture of whatever goes on in the tech sphere. And then I would decide what I wanted to do. It could be tech, it could be not tech, it could be anything. Those 2 years, I worked as an ASIC software engineer in Western Digital. To be very honest, it was not something I would have done for like X number of years or 10 years, but that gave me a lot of time in parallel to understand what I wanted to do. So I think those 2 years, which were in software development for hardware, that's also very close to robotics when it comes to the tech stack, because I was still working with C++ for hardware, for ASIC design or ASIC modeling to be precise. Those years set me up for everything which is now, because I explored a lot in those 2 years. To be honest, I explored a lot of technical stuff, because outside of my work, outside of those 8 hours, I would take up courses in robotics, go to meetups for robotics and this and that to see what I like. I even explored public policy in one of those 2 years to see that maybe I like non-tech more than tech, because I was a confused chap back then. But I was learning quite a bit even at my job, so I was getting better technically. I was spending time doing a lot more courses in robotics, in quite a few technical things, using Coursera, using Udacity. So that was quite nice. And towards the end of that stint, which was about 2 years, I realized that robotics is what I wanted to do exactly. If I were to be an engineer, I would be a roboticist, or otherwise I wouldn't do engineering. And I'll tell you why. The thing was, I had explored quite a bit. I had seen different facets of hardware engineering and software engineering. And what increased my love for robotics was it is extremely multidisciplinary. And I would be able to use my hardware chops, I would be able to use my software chops, and it seemed like an extremely creative job. Because now, because I work in robotics, I know that when you're working as a roboticist, you deal with problems you probably don't have an answer to right now, and even the internet won't be able to help you beyond a point unless you're creative. So you need to be creative. So I consider robotics engineering an extremely creative job, where you continuously try to solve problems, and these problems are new all the time. So as of now, the problem I'm dealing with in my job, it's not that I'll have the same problem next month. No, a new problem comes up, and then I have to find a way to work around that problem and solve that problem. But coming back to those 2 years, since I explored quite a bit, I understood all of these things, and I understood a lot about myself, that I like tech a lot, I like creativity a lot. And when it comes to my non-tech exploration, I enjoyed that exploration or that side of my life after works also a lot. And that made me realize that I do like non-tech things, but only up until a point. I like tech a lot more than non-tech. Now, this was an experience which reinforced the idea that I wanted to work in tech and I wanted to work in robotics. Without those non-tech experiences or non-tech exploration, I would not know that I really want to work in tech and robotics, because I would still have an idea in my head saying maybe the other side, which is non-tech, is super interesting. And I also realized in those 2 years that my strength lies in tech and communication, which is something I explore rigorously even right now. So as I said, after those 2 years, I realized that robotics is what I wanted to do. And at that point, I had decent jobs. I hope decent, but decent jobs in hardware engineering, in software engineering, mainly C++, object-oriented programming, of course. And then I applied for a master's in robotics, where I was I was almost sure that I'll apply for Europe and not the US. So I applied only for Europe, and I applied for 3 universities. That's it. People apply for 8 to 10 universities, but I applied to three because other programs had language issues. And for instance, some programs in Germany needed German, and I did not know German back then. So I ended up applying to three, and then I actually quit my job the day I applied for my third university. I did not have any results, and I knew that the current job, although it taught me a lot about software engineering, but it wasn't robotics, and this job wouldn't help me to go to the next level, which would be in robotics. So I quit my job saying, if I get a master's, great, I'll start my masters. If not, I anyway have to spend my time studying robotics full time and understanding this domain much better, so that I can leverage whatever skills I have for robotics. So that's what I did. I quit my job. I ended up studying at home. I read a lot of robotics books, like technical books. I learned a lot of stuff in machine learning, deep learning, as much as I could, of course. And I fortunately got in, and then I started my masters in Italy. So I moved to Italy 4 months after I quit my job, or 6 months after I quit my job. In between, I also traveled a little bit in parallel to studying. And then I moved to Italy. I did my master's there. I studied for 1 year. Uh, and then I moved to Germany, and I started working in Germany as a robotics engineer in the startup I'm working in right now. Now, the thing is, in the last 1.5 years was me working in the robotic startup I am in right now. A great ride. It's been amazing, and I love every bit. This entire journey taught me a lot about what I like and what I don't like, right? As I said, towards the end of my stint in Western Digital, I had realized that I like a lot of creativity in my work. I like tech, I like communication, I like writing, I like making videos. So right now what I'm doing is I'm actually combining everything. I love my day job, I absolutely love it. So that's tech. The creativity side of things, as an engineer, being a roboticist, you need a lot of creativity. So I absolutely love that part of my job. I had worked as a hardware engineer. I had my degree in electronics. I had worked a lot as a software engineer. So I combine both of them. Right now 80% of my time is with software engineering, and then 20% is with electronics. I absolutely love that combination. When it comes to making videos, that actually stems from my love for music, to be very honest. Although I did not talk about it, but as a kid I learned the guitar. I absolutely loved it. We used to make stupid music videos on YouTube, and that was before YouTube was a big thing. Of course, it never scaled because we just did it for fun. We had 4 or 5 videos, but all of that taught me quite a bit about video editing, and that's what I do right now. Although I'm not editing this video. This video is supposed to be unfiltered, raw, no changes as such. I record, I upload, that's it. And I want this video to be that way. But otherwise, I basically also used my ideas from music for editing this video. I plan to use a lot more of my own music for this channel in the future, just for fun. And when it comes to communication, the last 4 5 years, I also realized that I actually like, one, making videos, of course, but also talking about what I do and writing about what I do. So I write quite a bit on Medium. I love making these videos. Even this video, which is completely unfiltered and unedited, I absolutely love it because it's just one shot. I'm talking, and whatever comes out is absolutely true, and there is no editing at all, right? Maybe it's not the best for some of the viewers because they want videos to be really good, crisp, properly edited. But I do want some of my videos to be unfiltered because I want to speak to the camera with no editing, and not much sense of aesthetics per se, because you can see right here there's no aesthetics at all. And I just hope some of you find this interesting. I know I am just freewheeling right now, and I've told you about my journey in robotics and what I'm doing right now. Talking about this channel, as I said before, I'll use this channel as a canvas for me to talk about things I like in robotics, in tech, and basically my life in tech and robotics. But most of this, well, most of my channel will, of course, always be about super technical stuff in robotics, having different series in robotics, and most of it will be hands on because I am a firm believer in the idea that you gotta do hands on stuff, you gotta build, not just talk about building or talk about concepts to be a better engineer. And that's what I want to reinforce every time I make a video. So anyway, this was my journey, which started in 2012, and that was me exploring different subdomains, and I ended up here, and now I'm a robotics engineer, and it has been a great ride. I hope this video is interesting for some of you, Please, if this is interesting, do comment, because that helps me understand if I should make more such unfiltered videos where I'm just freewheeling. Every comment you put on YouTube on any of my videos, I actually, of course, read them, but I also take whatever I can from those comments to do better in the future. So please, if you like this video in any way, if you have any questions about my journey or any questions in general, please comment on this video, because that tells me that I am doing something right. And if of course you hate this video, you can also say that. Don't worry about it. So yeah, that's that, and I hope you enjoyed this video, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye bye.